This is the Blaze Radio News. I'm Jim Parisi. It takes some time to admit it, but now we're finally getting word the White House underestimates the size of ISIL. The Blaze Radio's Brad James.
The ISIS terrorist army, bigger in numbers than previously thought. White House spokesperson Josh Earnest.
The intelligence community has assessed that ISIL can muster between 20,000 and 31,500 fighters across Iraq and Syria.
Former Republican Governor Mike Huckabee speaking on Fox News saying it's time to call it a war with ISIS.
This is a legitimate threat. It truly does rise to the level of a clear and present danger, and we've got a president going to the dictionary to see if he can find a better word for war. It's crazy.
That's the Blaze Radio's Brad James reporting. Police on the lookout for a man who shot and killed a state trooper. It happened in northeastern Pennsylvania last night. It was a shift change at the barracks. A second trooper was also hit. He's in stable condition. This is news on the Blaze Radio Network.
Everyone is making the switch to the Blaze to make it their source for the truth. Why not make it your source for the truth? Make theblaze.com your homepage for news that the other outlets won't even touch. Subscribe to The Blaze TV at theblaze.com/TV or on Dish Network and get access to original programming like For the Record, the show that exposes what's really going on that the government doesn't want you to know. And Real News, the daily conversation on the topics of the day that matter most. Check out the Blaze Radio Network at theblaze.com/radio with original shows like Buck Sexton, The Morning Blaze with Doc Thompson, Pat and Stu, and Jay Severin. Or if you need something to hold in your hands, subscribe to the Blaze magazine. So basically, anywhere you need to go, you can take the truth with you by taking the Blaze with you. This is the Blaze. Truth lives here. So just to recap, anywhere you need to go, you can take the truth with you by taking the Blaze with you. Find out all the ways at theblaze.com.
Congress taking action on a U.S. Marine being held in Mexico.
Arizona Republican Congressman Matt Salmon setting up a congressional hearing called Sergeant Andrew Tamarisi, our Marine, in Mexican custody.
What we want to do is show the Mexican government that we mean business, that we want him out, and we want him out now. We also want to show the Obama administration that it's past time to get this done.
The congressman says the hearings won't be easy on either party involved.
So this is going to be very, very uncomfortable, I believe, for the government of Mexico, and it's going to be very uncomfortable for the Obama administration.
Salmon speaking on the record with Greta Van Susteren on Fox News. I'm Chris Vermillion, the Blaze News.
The U.S. Attorney's Office wanting more time to prosecute the only terrorist in custody for the Benghazi terrorist attacks. The Blaze Radio's John DeMaster.
You're dealing with classified information and a terrorist who was part of al-Qaeda for 2 decades.
Government prosecutors filing a motion to bypass the speedy trial rule. Ahmed Abu Khattala being held after being named as the central person involved in the attack, killing Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 other Americans. Republican Congressman Mike Pompeo of Kansas on the House Intelligence and Benghazi Select Committee saying the case may be weak and in trouble because of a legal decision made by the White House. Pompeo telling Fox News.
When you try and force upon a terrorist a legal system that wasn't meant or intended to deal with the crimes committed that night in Benghazi, Libya, that the results are a mess.
A judge granting a 6-week delay in the trial.
It's a controversial plan, but it bites the dust in California. The Blaze Radio's Greg Moore.
You won't have to learn extra zip codes to mail a letter to California. A measure that would have split the state into 6 separate states will not show up on a ballot in the foreseeable future after failing to qualify for the November 2016 ballot.
I'm Jim Parisi with news on the Blaze Radio Network. Truth lives here.
Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above the Parisi Palace at 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Thank you so much for being part of the program today. My show is about the 4 L's: leadership, love, life, and lineage, and the continuing story of real music made by real artists. Technique on the drum kit is essential, but meaningless without the infusion of soul. Some cats have monster chops, but sometimes you look up on the bandstand and they're not listening. They're thrashing, trying to eke out some kind of egomaniacal communication that does nothing to elevate the music. My guest today has serious chops and serious soul. His family's heritage is part African, part French, and part Blackfoot, which explains his ability to communicate in musical cultures playing funk with Paul Jackson, or angular modal jazz with Doug Carnes searching for a new land with his bass partner Buster Williams. It explains the Spanish influences of the South that my guest plugged into when he moved to New York out of high school, back with Larry Harlow and Willie Colon and Ray Barretto and Joe Cuba playing drums and timbales on countless Fania albums. The Latin feel, the clave beat, the infectious cyclical propulsion. His adherence to African rhythms was evident in the modal driving McCoy Tyner quartet, channeling Coltrane's thesauruses of scales and expressing the deep, emotive, visceral fire of the African-American experience in this country. My guest was all over New York scene, playing with folkies like Tim Hardin, stoner jazz with Jeremy Steig, jazz rock with Larry Coryell, knowing that the 11th house comes after 10, but not before 12. He's been a band leader, arranger, producer, father, actor, and inspiration, because it's hard to see live music today. Most bass players and drummers can't sustain the hypnotic pocket. This is not the case with my guest, who has to hold it down as Azar Lawrence blows over the percussive piano of Theo Saunders and the undulating bass of the skipper, Henry Franklin. The weather report for today is sunny with a chance of hi-hats, tom-toms, tablas, and marimbas. Always creating, Alphonse Mouzon. Welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hello, Jake. What's up?
How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great.
You know, I find it so fitting to talk to you because I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about 2 cats that have left us, and you can talk about either your musical collaborations with them or just what you consider them as musicians. One of them is Gerald Wilson, and then one of them is Joe Sample.
Yeah, just so recent. Gosh. Yeah. I just found out about Joe early this morning. I'm still in shock because I was thinking about Joe a couple of days ago. I was looking at the photo of Joe and I at a restaurant at the hotel in Japan, and this was 2008. We were there, and I was there with Larry Coryell. Me and Larry Coryell and my organist Joe Bagg, and Joe Sample was there playing with his band. A lot of musicians were there, and it was great. We were sitting down having lunch together. But Joe and I had played together with Larry Coryell back in the early, the late '80s, early '90s at UCLA. With El Subramaniam, a violinist, Indian violinist, and he had about 6 Indian percussionists.
Wow.
Playing these weird time signatures. It was so hard playing Indian music. And Joe played with us on a number. It was great. Larry Coryell and I, played with El Subramaniam and a bunch of Indians, East Indians, and Joe Sample was there too, playing with us. That's a drag. I mean, he's a great composer and pianist. Man.
What about the I've heard you talk about it before, but it's this, it's the tech, not just the technique, but it's the human element of music. I mean, Joe Sample seemed to me to epitomize the human element of music, just because
Exactly.
He came from that Creole background in Louisiana, and those guys are actually, he came from Houston. His original family came from Louisiana, but just they were tenacious. And I know that they were coming of age on the West Coast when you were coming of age on the East Coast, but I have to believe you guys crossed paths. That guy was full of love, and I just, it's shocking, but it also reinforces the fragility of life,
Yeah. I didn't know he was sick.
Can I ask you, I wanted to ask you a question. This is fascinating to me. Can you talk about growing up in South Carolina and the kind of Blackfoot music, that kind of Native American music that you might have been listening to growing up?
Oh, well, when I was growing up, that just, the Blackfoot is just part of my heritage. But when I was growing up in Charleston, because we had a AM FM radio, and we did get a record player, but that came later because we were really poor back then. And I listened to mostly, R&B and rock. It was rock and R&B, which is embedded in my soul, the rock and R&B, you know. And it wasn't until I was 14 that I started listening to jazz, because my brother, God bless his soul, Simon, was in the Army, so he brought back albums, and we would play the albums at home, and I would listen to the, Buddy Rich and Max Roach record that they did together, the drum battle. And a lot of other jazz, Cannonball, I knew about Cannonball Adderley, who I met when I was 18. He's the one that told me to go to New York. And I met him in Florida. So it's funny, because my brother had these records, and I knew who Cannonball was, and he was teaching at the school for Florida A&M. I was with the high school band, and we had these competitions, all state competing. And so, so I listened to everything. And then I was playing marching band. And I was like #1 drummer, 3 years in a row, just doing all state competition. And so that's when I met at one of the music camps or something, because I couldn't afford college. Then, he told me to go to New York, and within a year, I'm on stage. We sang. I think I was 18, so it was like before weather, because I was 21. So in 2 years, I was 18. By the time I was 20, I'm at the Apollo Theater playing with Eugene McDaniel. God bless him.
Oh my God,
Headless Heroes. 100 Pounds of Clay. We did a record called Headless Heroes of Apocalypse. You don't have that record, you got to check it out.
Oh, but I mean that record was a huge.
Politically,
No.
He was talking about what's going on now. He was way ahead of himself. The lyrics, what he talked about, it was so political that Spiro Agnew called Atlantic Record and told him, take it off, don't promote it.
Wow.
And they did. The record died and stuff. But a lot of people are sampling it, rappers. I mean, it's so funky. It was an amazingly funky record, and funky and politically. We talk of everything that's happening now.
I remember there was a huge. When I was in college, there was a huge resurgence of that album, and at the time they didn't give any accompanist credits. Only now do I realize that Alphonse Mouzon played drums on that album, and it's a very righteous album, but it also speaks to sort of, to me, the sophistication of the African political musician. I mean, you had Oscar Brown Jr., you had Eugene McDaniels, you had, there were other cats that were, they seemed to know what they were talking about, and they were able to express it through the medium of music. And I just feel like at that time, when I look back on it, it seemed to be more powerful. It seemed to be I mean, where you had Spiro Agnew shouting it down to take it off the records, because it was really, it really was true leadership. And I don't, today it just, I mean, I know there's, to me, it was when you can communicate and have dexterity through multiple instruments, and you're able to communicate those thoughts through the instruments, not sampling, but through the instruments. Right. That to me is, and you grew up in that. I mean, you felt that, and I'd love you to take us back to that time, getting to New York, and talk to all these. I just want you to tell the story of how you connected with the Latin cats, because I don't. There's a lot of, you were the drummer for Fania, so this is part of very important history. So take us through this, how that connection was made. Yeah,
I graduated when I was 17 from high school, so because later, in November I turned 18, but I was 17. I went to New York alone, or a train. I took a bus. I think it was a bus. I took a bus, a train, like $40. I remember $40 and a couple of chicken sandwiches. Went to New York. I went to stay with my aunt, Estelle, God bless her soul, and my cousin at Gertrude, who was a nurse. And so when I stayed with them in New York for like 2 weeks, and I wanted to be autonomous, so I wanted my own independence. So I moved only like 300 feet away from them down the street, on 156th Street, and got my own flat, $12 a week. And I was there when I played with Weather Report. That was the spot. And across the street was the Ross Carnegie Orchestra when I moved. 2 weeks there, and I moved to be autonomous. And then I heard this big band, and I went and sat in with them and started playing with these guys. And they guys from Duke Ellison, Count Basie, doing casual with the Ross Carnegie. He was a black guy that owned this apartment building, and below was his basement that he had a big band. And he was an average organ player, but he was a businessman. And sometimes he would have 2, 3, 4 different bands or orchestras playing at the big hotels in New York. And I was one of the drummers. When I sat in that day, Frankie Dunlop was playing drums. I didn't know Monk, and I didn't know Frankie Dunlop was the drummer. So I sat in and played this little Charleston beat, groove beat, boom, 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 because the guy didn't have great timing. The organ player, Ross Carnegie, and I locked him in, and he loved that groove. Like Groove Holmes groove, the drummer groove. Yeah. I just put that chicken fat on those drums, and he loved it, man. I got hired on the spot to play the drums and carry and to help with the organs. I didn't even have my drums. No drum. I had drumsticks. But I would play Frankie's drum, or whoever the drummer's drum. I would play a couple of songs with Ross because he felt comfortable with the way I played. It was a blessing for him, and it was a blessing for me, too, to get $20 a night. That's what I was getting in Charleston anyway, playing with the high school my high school band director, Lonnie Appleton, saxophone player. So I had my experience already playing, gigs a lot in Charleston with with the older guys. I was the old kid in the band, 15 years old, playing with these guys. But I got paid the same as them. So
did you? You moved to the flat, and then you just.
But the Latin music, you want to know about the Latin?
Well, yeah, but I do want to finish the Carmichael story, because to me it's fascinating. I mean, you have to go through.
Ross Carnegie.
Yeah, I mean,
it was amazing.
You just walked. You're telling me you just started to check it out and say I can play drums, and they said have a seat, or were you hipped off? How did you?
Oh no, yeah, I was in my room because the room had a piano, out of tune, but it had a piano, a bed. And I had bathroom privileges upstairs, so I heard a lot of West Indian music, reggae, because the people were from the islands, they were living there too. So I got exposed to all that music, and I took timbale lessons from a cat who played with a Ross, he's from Puerto Rico. I played with Ross Carnegie, and he taught me, and. I was aware I hear Latin music all the time. And I used to date a girl in Spanish Harlem. That's why I wrote music. I would hear music in my head. I walked down the street and I wrote Virtue because I was in Spanish Harlem, and Mungo Santa Maria recorded that.
Unbelievable.
You know?
Unbelievable.
And I was 18 years old. I'm writing a song, got my song, and my publishing I owned, you know. It seemed like it was just easier back then. I just walked into things. And I'm like 18, and I'm going down. I hear this music from my apartment. I said, "Whoa, that's music. There's a band." So I went across the street, and I saw the sign, Ross Cornell. I said, "Oh, my goodness." And I went and knocked on the door, and he let me in. I said, "I'm from Charleston. I just moved here 2 weeks ago. I was living down the street, but I'm closer to you now. I didn't know there was a band here." And I played the drums. So, yeah, you play the drums. And so they gave me the sticks. Frankie got off his job. I started playing with the organ player.
I love it. Now, you just brought up something interesting. And Larry Willis talked about it too, because he was in Harlem for a long time. You could talk a little bit about.
We played together. Organ. We played on my record. Larry Willis. My The Essence of Mystery. My first solo record for Blue Note.
Really, I didn't know that. Essence of Mystery.
Larry Willis was on the piano. He had a problem because he couldn't use his name. He was on some record company. He didn't want to use his name. He was playing piano.
Yeah, that was.
I'm playing piano. He's playing piano. Yeah.
Well, no, I wanted you to talk about the importance of. He talked to me about the stifling of culture, and you're talking about the culture was just right out in your ears, in your face. You could see it. Music was being developed in your head because you could hear it all the time. It was right there. It was very visceral. Whereas today, really, in the corporate society that we live in, the culture's pushed off the street now. You can go to the RG Club and check you guys out, but it's not like where everything was right. All the different cultures were right in your face on the street. I mean, Sugar Ray Robinson lived in Harlem. He'd go to the barber shop there, but you'd have guys playing conga drums out front, timbales. You'd hear all this West Indian music. And then you look at what you guys did as far as expanding the sonic nature of music with Weather Report or the 11th House, and I believe it's a direct attribution to that, whereas what Larry was talking about to me was just the idea of stifling the culture and how dangerous that can be.
That can be.
And I just would like you to, I know it was probably...
I was fortunate, I guess. I was very fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I heard, I had to like West Indian music. Because I heard it, even if I didn't like it, I loved it because I was hearing it all day. And I play it. And so when I was in 1985 or 1982, something like that, I was in Montego Bay with Denise Williams, the singer.
Wow, yeah. Sure.
Yeah, had a big song. Let's hear it for the boy, or something like that. And she did a reggae song. I was over there playing, and all the guys came over. And they thought I was from there. I said, no. I'm from Charleston, New York. They said, no, man. Everything you play, man. The way I was playing, they couldn't believe it. Because I heard it all my, not all my life, but since I was 18. In Charleston. I mean, in New York when I moved to New York, so I was hearing Latin music, and I hear all the reggae music, so I can play it really backwards. I mean, it's in my blood.
Well,
I teach reggae drumming.
Yeah, and so you teach the reggae beat, which was on the 1 and the 3 instead of the 2 and 4. Is that right?
Yeah, 1 and 3. But there's reggae. You can put the accent 1 and 3, but there's the beats are 2 and 4 too as well. It's just reggae. The drums can be on the 2 and 4, and you have the guitar playing on up beats.
Yeah, I wanted to...
So it's so many variation, and you can play 4/4 on the bass drum. I show people different reggae, shuffle, every kind of reggae.
Exactly. We need to talk more. I didn't know about that.
Yeah, because it's not limited. It's not limited. It's still expandable.
Well,
all music, even jazz. I don't like to limit it. But I tell you, these days with jazz radio, man, gosh, that's stifling because a lot of the radio, you don't play a swing beat on, you play straight 4/4, or and like I know. Years ago, I said, man, I use electric piano. People go crazy. It's still today, except for, K-Jazz in L.A. they play it, but it was a period where they wouldn't even play stuff that was electric. But now they're doing jazz. They're playing jazz format. And my old keyboard player has a show there, David Benoit, who used to play in my band. I had him in the studio the first time. He was in the studio. I had Lee now and Dave Grusin, and Dave Benoit was my piano player. He was so afraid, I told him, just play. Then years later, he went and signed with Dave Grusin.
Right.
I helped him get with his start, playing on my record, on my Blue Note album.
Well, we have Alphonse, incredibly articulate, but I want to, we do play a lot of music on this show, and I wanted to throw in a piece of music here and then come back and break it down, okay?
Oh, sure, no problem.
That tune, Alphonse.
That was me on drums with Doug Kahn back in the day. I was 18 years old.
Nailed. And, we didn't even play Doug's solo on that. Do you remember who was on trumpet? I'm not sure if you all did it together in one take.
Yeah, we played it all. Sounded like that could have been Charles Tolliver.
Oh, you nailed it. A flugelhorn for Tolliver. And pulsating. What do you hear in that music, Alphonse, that as a musician, I don't know, that this period of time for me it's so in the pocket, it's so visceral, it's so driving. Can you explain what
it's a driving rhythm, African rhythm in 7, I was playing. Because Doug was influenced by McCoy. So I think I played with Doug before I played with McCoy.
This, by the way, that was 1972, so it was right at that time.
Right at the time. Okay, right. So I played with McCoy in 72, so probably Doug before McCoy. But he's influenced by McCoy, And Doug we played together with Miles Smiles last November, because we were teaching at the University of North Florida, Jacksonville.
Sure.
We were teaching master classes for 4 days.
I love it.
Me and Wallace Roney and I and Larry Coryell and bassist Ralph Armstrong. And we invited, Wallace invited Doug, because he lives there, in Florida, on piano. And we played with the big band, and also played with Miles Smells. It was great.
Yeah, the name of that tune was Trance Dance. The whole album is just, the whole, but, okay, so Coryell.
It was just a nice, Coryell.
Well, Coryell, you, Karn, Wallace Roney, okay, so you're doing master classes, but.
Yeah, and we played with Miles Smells, so we played the music of Miles Davis. We did that, with Doug.
Let me ask you, though, do you think that, again, it's just the fact that it's happening is great, but do you feel like, is that the kind of experiential learning that you got growing up? I don't think so. It's different. It's in a classroom. So I'm just trying to gain this idea between you in a flat going across the street, and next thing you know, Frankie Dunlap's not showing up, and it was just like a potpourri.
Oh, no, he was there. Frankie was there. He just got off the drums and let me play his drums.
But what I'm saying is your experience was on the bandstand. It wasn't with...
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you feel you're able to create change, enlighten people, and keep music going within a classroom or an academic setting. It's not the way you guys were. What didn't mean you guys aren't sharp and intellectual. Just you were making the rules up.
Yeah, but when we did our master class, it was very loose, because we talk about arrangements, and we were presenting, Miles Smells, and the orchestra were playing solely the music of Miles Davis. And so that was easy because everybody was influenced by Miles. So, and the kids are very talented kids that played in the orchestra. Amazing young musicians. So we weren't teaching them how to play because they knew how to play. We just we talked about arrangements and space and all that kind of thing. And when I did my drum class, I performed. I had, the bass player there, what's his name? Henry something. Not the skipper, but he was one of the teachers there, and he sat in with me, and I just played, and then answered questions, So it was, and with Wallace, when we all did a group thing together where we talked about arrangement, and I would talk, Larry would speak, and Ralph Armstrong, and the kids would ask us questions. It was like a 20-piece band orchestra. So it was very, I mean, you were talking about how.
I guess what I'm saying
is
on
the bandstand,
yeah.
I learned, but I did learn in a classroom because I learned from Lonnie Hamilton all scales and whatnot. He would tell the drummers, "Hey, you guys, be quiet back there. You should be listening too." And I listened because I'm a composer. I write songs because when he was talking about how many flats, B flat, or how many sharps and D or whatever, and scales, you pay attention if you want to learn this stuff. Because I play piano and trumpet now, so I did learn in a classroom theory. The theory you don't learn on the stage. That you have to learn.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, okay, so all these younger cats.
It's like if you go to the doctor, you can just go out on the field, the medic, and start cutting into somebody. You have to learn. You have to practice.
No. I mean, you need the rudiments. But what I'm saying is,
so have to be,
where are these cats? Right. The cats that you're infusing all this information and all this sort of space and all the concepts that you came from. You at least could go out and just get it out of your system and learn and play that live. I mean, I think part of it is that the venues, there's not as many venues to play at. There's not as much opportunity to hone or craft your own individual style, your sound. I think that's part of the issue today is that you have all these kids in North Florida. They have 4 days, they intake all this great stuff, and they can't express themselves. There's no place to play. It's not like, those paid gigs are...
No, but they have the concerts every week there, so... At least they have a place where they can play.
Mm-hmm. So
they're fortunate. If you go to the school, they're always playing.
So let's finish the story about how did you meet the lab?
But other people, I know what you're talking about. But sometimes, if you're local musicians, you're learning. Just like if you went to Berkeley learning all this stuff, you can't get a gig. You have to practice at home wait till you get an opportunity.
You can't.
Or you just have jam sessions at home. Have guys come over and play or just play. That's how you do it.
So did you? I want to finish this story because it's so important for our cultural heritage. Did you meet Jerry Mascucci, or how did you get to Fania? Let's finish that story.
Okay. So I'm walking through Harlem, Spanish Harlem, and I'm hearing this song in my head, and didn't have cell phones or iPhones back then, and I didn't have a little portable tape recorder with me because I don't even know if they had them back then, small one. But I kept singing that song, took the subway home, and I got to my piano at home and wrote the song, Virtue. I recorded it. Bobby Humphrey recorded it. Mungo Santa Maria recorded it. Pancho Sanchez recorded it. Yeah. But I wrote a song called Climax for Mungo Santa Maria. It's up from the roots.
Yes.
Virtue, and then Climax is on his live in Montreux.
Oh, man.
He could never pronounce my name right. He said, "Here's the song by Alphonse Mouzon." Alphonse Mouzon. Alphonse Mouzon. God bless him. Alphonse Mouzon. But I met his in the Bronx. I guess when I was in Washington Heights. I met Marty Scheller someplace, at the Union maybe, and he was writing for him. I said, we changed numbers. And I would call Marty up and say, check out this tune. And he loved the song. He brought it to Mungo. And remember, Mungo, I guess it reminded Mungo of the hit that he wrote for Herbie Hancock, Afro Blue. What Herbie wrote, what I'm a little mad for, but John Coltrane recorded Mungo's Afro Blue. Do, and this is similar, the virtue is similar, And so that was amazing. I was amazed by that. I got my song recorded,
And
a lot of people, it was easier back then.
and through that, you just started.
Through that,
yeah.
Marty, because the Latin, I'm writing for Mungo, putting the stuff out, and people hear me play in New York. I got to play with Joe Bataan and Barretto, Celia Cruz, all the people at the Fania All-Star, at Madison Square. There was 34,000 people, playing. So that's how that happened, I played. And I guess on YouTube there's the Latin Hustle. Joe Bataan and me.
Yeah, no, I mean, that to me, those cats were so unbelievable because, I mean, they were playing gritty salsa music, and that's where you were lit. Where was their studio? Where did they used to cut those albums?
A&R Studio was where everybody recorded Electric Lady, but the Fania would have been an A&R Studio, one of those studios there.
I don't know. Also, if you noticed the when we came into when we opened the show, there was a bass out front with you playing drums and
who was that?
Yeah, I'm gonna get you that because that is unreleased. That's 1973 from Montreux Jazz Festival. That's you and Cecil McBee playing. You're the rhythm section with John Clemmer, and some of the stuff was released on Impulse, and that was Tree of the Forbidden Fruit, and that was the Gamma Branch. This is the most ferocious side B I've ever heard. There's a guy named Tom Canning on piano.
Me and
And this is
a back B.
And then
and John Clemmer. Yeah.
I mean, and that was the other part of it. When you would go to a festival like that, I mean, you had never played with Clemmer before. I mean, that seemed like it was just putting guys together that, just hit it.
It was putting guys together, and that's back then, I was a Voodoo, and he was with Impulse. That's what happened. I was there with my band, and then I played with McCoy Tyner, and I have my own band. I put a band together with Cecil McBee, myself, Kevin Toady was playing.
Oh.
And he was young. He was 18 and 19. I was like 21 or 22.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
The Blackbirds, Donald Byrd, put that group together. So I said, "Hey, you want to play with me, kid?" I was like 21. He's 18. So I said, "Come on," and recorded with me. And Nathan Davis on saxophone.
Oh my!
And my tunes, I got on the piano, showed him the songs, and played. And the same with John Clemmer. Got some songs, and play this, and rehearse it, and you just play and record it. He did a concert, and they were recording a live record.
Can you talk?
And then I did my show with McCoy Tyner. That's the way. That's the way we roll.
Alphonse, I couldn't think of I've seen you live play, and you just demonstrate no matter what else is going on around you. You're just you're determined to say what you have to say and hold it down. But I wanted you to talk about your concept of love as it relates to music and how you try to carry yourself as a human being. I think you guys really. I think it's really important to talk about love with you guys. So if you could talk about that, I appreciate it.
Well, you have to have love. Because a loveless musician is a sad person. You can hear it in the music. So when you have love, the music just breathes more. So you have to love what you're doing, and you love the guys that you're playing with, and your home life. You have to have some kind of love and sentiment, that's, favorable, auspicious, because that translates through music, as an individual. So when I'm playing, I just don't play the drums. I mean, of course I don't play just the drums because I play multi-instruments. But when I'm on the stage, I'm not just playing the drums, the rhythms. I'm playing melodies. I'm trying to support the soloist. and trying to inspire, and just I'm playing chords with my drums, and I can hear. So as a pianist, I know where he's going, and as a saxophonist and trumpet player, I know where they're going because I play flute, sax, and trumpet, so I know. And I play bass, so I feel the instrument. I know where they're going before they're going there. I do it, and look, I know because I'm not just a drummer. I'm a musician.
That's right. And an actor.
I hear things and I try to make it.
Right.
So I hear it. So I don't hear it like other people see things, and I don't see things the way people see. I see others. It's weird how I view and see things. I always look outside the box. I don't look in the box. I look in and out. So a different angle. I hear rhythms. I can hear. It's weird because I say, "Man, I'm weird." I hear things that people don't hear.
So you are absolutely a vital cog. We're going to listen to a piece of music here. I got another piece queued up for you. I think you're going to get a kick out of it, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
But I tell you one thing, Jake.
Go ahead.
People are going to be surprised when I finally finish my albums. I've been working so long on this.
We'll get to it. Let's check this out, and then we'll come back.
All right. Oh yeah.
Yeah. The Jake Feinberg Show is sponsored in part by the Stereo Hospital, with over 40 years of experience repairing all types of home audio equipment, from vintage table radios to digital surround sound. Located at 4044 East Speedway inside Metronome Music, it's the place to take your turntable, CD player, tape deck, heck, just about anything to do with your stereo. Call 722-4610. Give a call to the Stereo Hospital, and we appreciate their sponsorship. Well, go ahead, Alphonse. Take it away.
Man, what you just played just had me dancing.
Me too, man.
I mean, it's just a groove that we laid down. Me on drums with Paul Jackson, not Paul Jackson Jr., the guitar player. Paul Jackson, no relationship, the bass player, and Ray Oviedo guitar. The late great Webster Lewis on organ, Herbie Hancock on synthesizer keyboards, Betty Moffett on saxophone.
Was Bill Summers playing percussion too?
Bill Summers owned percussion.
What a great video that I realized I was looking through your discography. I'm like,
that was the video you played?
That was off YouTube. Yeah, that was the most.
Oh, YouTube.
Yeah, and then we can stream that through, but it's so ridiculous because, I'm looking through your discography and there you are in Black Octopus, which is a Paul Jackson album. You played on.
Yeah, right.
And it was the most ridiculous album ever. And
He's dressed like a samurai with all the basses coming, like 8 different basses. So this is an octopus, and we recorded it in Japan, and recorded a record with Herbie in Japan, and one with a Japanese singer. We did.
I saw that this morning. I mean, there's almost too much, but to me, when I think of love in music, I think of that because everybody was contributing. I mean, Benny Maupin was playing maracas. You were obviously on trash.
Yeah.
But everybody was up dancing. I mean, it was like
dancing. Exactly.
So I'm just thinking everybody's listening to each other, and I think that
that was a very tight band. I love playing with that band. And then we had a band too with Sheila E. playing. It was just great.
Oh, man.
I played like 2.5 years with Herbie. I wrote 4 songs for Herbie. I played keyboards on his Monster album. I played drums, of course, but I played keyboards on a song I wrote called Go For It. And I wrote this hit, Making Love, I wrote for him. An R&B song. It was a single.
You brought up something earlier that was really fascinating. Like Larry Willis played piano, but you couldn't credit him because some of those
And the same thing with George Duke, God bless George.
Mm-hmm.
The earlier record with George, I could use George Duke's name, playing on my record, on Funky Snakefoot, I could use George Duke's name. I used the Willie Gunga with this pseudonym.
I was going to say, because when I got that album, I'm like, there are no accompanist credits. Did Alphonse do everything on this album? I couldn't believe that. I mean, I figured you would bring in your buddies, and so now you're at least pulling the drapes back a little bit. It's nice to know who's on those albums.
Right.
Talk about
those only 2 artists, the 2 pianists, Larry Willis and George Duke, were on my albums. They couldn't use them, because they were like Flying Dutchman, I think. Larry Willis I couldn't use, and Duke was on some other label couldn't use the name. You play on it and get paid and play on it, but you couldn't use the name.
I have a question.
They're respected musicians, that are playing on other records.
Do you feel like there was a more adequate representation of Afro jazz when you were coming of age? I think of the Spirit of a New Age, or Spirit of a New Land with Doug Carn. That was put out by Gene Russell, and idea, it was called Black Jazz Records. I mean, that you don't need to be a rocket scientist to say, wow. So what's he getting at? And what he was getting at was that here are all these unsung heroes of America's only true art form, and the label's called Black Jazz. And I just so I just want you to talk about that, because today it seems that jazz is more of a world music now. I mean, it's incorporating a lot more rhythms of all over the world, but in a way it's loosened up and become a little bit more, inclusive. But I don't know if it doesn't have that same visceral feel or message in the music that Afro jazz had at that time. I just like to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I know all depends on the artist.
Right.
Right. Because it hasn't left me. The stuff I'm working on, and where I play, I still play out here in Los Angeles, like I'm playing, like I played in New York. It's the same fire and energy, Doesn't matter, if I'm playing, jazz, funk, fusion, or rock, just the spirit, like you say, and the love of music. You got to love what you do. It all comes through music, the love. You got to reach out to the people, and you got to reach out to your fellow musicians on stage. You're having a conversation. So you're not just there. Of course, you're going to listen, but you're going to respond too. You're going to interject. So that's what music is about. When you're creating, you have a conversation.
Did you? Can you talk for a minute about? We're talking to a drummer here who was in the first rendition of Weather Report, which was a groundbreaking band. But you also played on Tim Hardin, Bird on a Wire. I mean, you're playing folk music too. I mean, to me, Alphonse, one of the most dexterous drummers, in the history of our lexicon of percussionists. And I wonder at this point, your daughter's off in New Hampshire. You just let her go off to school. Someday I'll do that
right.
with my kids. We have other people that do that. But, what are some of those driving forces that you want to continue to leave your imprint on our society, on the world, as it relates to the human component of music?
That's what Smooth as Silk and High Noon is about, the two new releases I'm working on. Early this morning, my daughter FaceTimed me. I said I was on the computer working on these songs, sequencing what I'm going to do, and go back in the studio and just add some more coloring, because it's like a baking, a recipe. You taste it, and say, oh, needs some more seasoning here and there. And so that's the joy of cooking. It's the same. You're cooking on the stage. You're cooking in the studio. It's the music you're cooking. And I want to leave that imprint of love. When people, they know my style of writing, they can hear my melodies. They know. It's like Joe Sample, God bless him. You know his style when he plays and when he writes a song. You bring that character in, And all musicians, not everybody have that, because a lot of times you listen to the radio now, I don't know who's who, because I know one of my saxophone players, who toured with me and recorded with Richard Elliott, but I hear so many other guys sound like him,
That's right.
I'm going to sound somebody's coming like Richard Elliott. I can't even tell. And I'm a musician. I'm thinking, gosh,
Is it a?
I mean, I'd like to be terrible if I had every drummer sound like Alphonse. I'll be pissed. What is this? Like Sanborn, everybody sounds like, what's going on there? I'll be mad.
It's true. As I was talking, I promoted a show for a guy who played with Bill Monroe's Bluegrass Boys, Peter Rowan, and he just said, when he was coming of age with C-Train and Bill, Bill Monroe was kind of, you knew the 25 cats who were going to make it. Their identities were set. Maybe it was more than 25, but now it's just there's just the amount of musicians. And let's be honest, what you're talking about here is, again, people sounding like people instead of really trying to develop their own individual.
Their own style. I go, man, it just pisses me off because I know Richard's style. I know Kurt Willem, he's different than Richard. Those two you can hear, but I hear so many other guys, man. And Sanborn, you knew. But there's so many other guys. They all sound alike.
Yeah, and that's when I was listening back. I mean, it didn't matter if it was Eric Gravatt, yourself, Tony Williams, Mickey Roker. Everybody had their own style. I mean, even the drummers were palpable. It wasn't just playing rhythm. And I just think it's incredibly important. I mean, you're right. When I saw you play with the Skipper and Azar and Theo Saunders, I said, the magic is still exists because that music swung so hard because you've still infused it into your music. But I just, Alphonse, I think we need to do at least another hour. But this hour flew by. But I can't thank you enough for taking the time.
I just wanted to tell you and the audience to be on the lookout when I'm finished with this record, hopefully sometime this year, the next month or two, of High Noon and Smooth as Silk, because they're contemporary and bluesy and funky and jazzy. I'm incorporating all the styles. And you're going to hear me more, sure, as a drummer, but also as a trumpeter and keyboard. Because my Angel Face record, did you know I played trumpet on Never Say Never?
When you do, don't be totally crazy about it. When you get it put up or when it's ready to go, that's when we will do part 2 and we'll put the album on full display.
Sure.
All right?
People are going to be blown away when they hear it, because I have my old sound. Sure, I'm influenced by Miles Davis when I play the muted trumpet, but it's the human voice that you hear. and the breath that I try to when I play the trumpet.
Well, Alphonse, thank you so much. It was just great to talk to you, brother. Keep playing love, keep playing for and keep being a leader. And all right, rest in peace, Gerald Wilson and Joe Sample, and we'll talk soon.
Gerald Wilson, I met him last year. Well, we did a thing together maybe 15 years ago at the Hohenlohe, part of the Playboy Jazz Festival. I was upstairs and he was downstairs, and we talked about that last June. We were doing a documentary for Charleston musicians, and they came in town and were interviewing me, and we're at the local union in L.A., and I met him there again, and we talked. A great guy, great composer, a great arranger, and a trumpet player.
All right, my man.
God bless him.
We'll talk to you soon, Alphonse. Thank you for making the time, brother.
Definitely.
All right.
For sure.
Talk to you soon. We'll be back.
God
bless you.
Okay, part two.
We'll be back on the other side with Abbott Taylor, Chuck Goldschmidt, a whole lot of music to get to live here on Power Talk 1210. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, and we'll be back in just a little bit.
Hello, brother.
I've been around the world
a
few times.
Thanks for the great interview. And,
but I don't understand. I just like to play the blues. It's not all the money that I want. I just like to play the blues. And I like for everybody to get together and all of us play the blues. Let's have a good time. Because blues is where it's at. I'm telling you, I love it. I can't help but play it. So when you wake up in the morning,
you're a gig.
And ain't got no money, or no gig, whatever you call it.